York City. You are now rocking with the best. Lloyd Banks. I said hands up. You know I'm putting something on me right before I leave out of the car.
Known as the lyrical mastermind in the famous hip-hop group G-Unit, this rapper was talented yet underrated by most people. The rapper is none other than Lloyd Banks. Lloyd Banks came out in the early 2000s and quickly rose to fame alongside the likes of 50 Cent and the group G-Unit. Regarded as one of hip-hop's finest MCs and unofficial punchline king, Lloyd Banks was a fan favorite to most who lived through the commercial boom in the 2000s. However, in some eyes, he was known as the poster boy for taking your foot off the gas. Lloyd Banks was so good that one could place a bet on him in a rap battle and have a 90% chance of winning the bet. Lloyd was at the top of his game. However, his music career turned to the worst as he didn't have the heights of the 2004 album Beg for Mercy, which solidified him as a platinum-selling artist. So what happened? Banks' story is one that involves rebirth and resurgence, as well as a beef with one of his former childhood friends and boss 50 Cent. We will be covering more as we dive into the recent history of Lloyd Banks. Lloyd Banks was born on April 30th, 1982. He originally was born in New Carrollton, Maryland. However, he ended up in Queens, New York. Lloyd was a hip-hop lover and grew up listening to Big Daddy Kane, who was his main early influencer. He also liked artists such as Rakim and Slick Rick. Lloyd Banks eventually liked the newer generation at that time, which had the likes of Snoop Dogg, Tupac, and Biggie. Lloyd Banks decided to become a rapper after he performed for the first time at the age of 11 or 12. He liked the thrill of the stage and decided to battle people in Queens, New York. Banks was from 134th and Guy Brewer Boulevard in Jamaica, Queens, so everybody that knew him knew he was the best rapper in the neighborhood. Lloyd Banks was close to Tony Yayo. They both had a 4-year age gap, so they hung out a lot, and that is how the bond between Banks and Yayo happened. They both had a passion for rapping, and this was huge to their bond as they liked rapping together. 50 Cent came into the picture later. However, in the music culture back then, age gaps were considered a huge factor. This led 50 Cent to hang out with Tony Yayo, since they had an age gap of 3 years. As a result of this, Yayo had become the middleman between Lloyd Banks and 50 Cent finally meeting. As Tony Yayo introduced Banks to 50 Cent, 50 heard Banks' lyrics and loved the type of lyrics Banks was spitting. So that's how the G-Unit was formed. However, before hearing them together, Yayo and Banks would be releasing a lot of freestyles appearing on the DJ Rough Hand mixtape 134 All-Stars. In 2001, Banks, Yayo, and 50 ended up recording a lot of music together. The first track of the trio was called Bad News. It would end up getting featured on the 50 Cent is the Future mixtape. However, the first track that was loved and heard by the public was a track called That's What's Up. That almost didn't happen as Lloyd Banks almost lost his life on September 10, 2001. The day before the tragic 9/11, the rapper was shot at the club, both bullet wounds hitting the stomach and back. This incident made Banks concentrate on his music rather than going out. Lloyd Banks teamed up with his usual partners, 50 and Yayo, as they ended up teaming with DJ Who Kid. The collaboration started pumping out mixtapes, building their buzz. From the buzz, 50 ended up getting signed with Shady Records under Interscope and Aftermath. 50 was granted his own label, which was the G-Unit Records, and his first two partners in crime were Yayo and Banks. This was when Banks got his major label deals, and his first major label album appearance was on 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying, on the track Don't Push Me. He ended up getting on a track with 50 Cent, who was a huge celebrity at the time, and Eminem. Banks wasted no time as he released his debut mixtape, Money in the Bank, in the summer of 2003. This was the first official mixtape where he was the leading artist. He followed another mixtape, Mo Money in the Bank, on September 20th, 2003. This solidified him as a solo artist as he was gearing up for his junior debut album, the G-Unit album, which was released on November 14, 2003. The title was Beg for Mercy. The album was a success, selling 380,000 copies within the first week and debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. However, in the album, it was 50 Cent, Young Buck, and Lloyd Banks. That time, Tony Yayo was in prison, and the Game wasn't in the group. This meant Banks got the time to shine on the album. Banks was more lyrical than 50 Cent and considered that he was the youngest, had people's attention. The album was a great leadway to Banks' debut album because the fourth single that was released off Beg for Mercy was a track called Smile, and it was a Lloyd Banks. In April 2004, Lloyd released his first single off his new album called On Fire. The single peaked at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. Banks was also the first artist in G-Unit to do this since 50 Cent was signed to Eminem's label. Lloyd Banks' career skyrocketed as his next album, Hunger for More, skyrocketed to number 1 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 400,000 copies within the first week. According to RIAA certification, it says that the album has only gone platinum. The certification date was on September 9, 2004. A lot of people speculated that the album has now sold well over 3 million copies. Lloyd Banks released another single, I'm So Fly, which was released on July 13, 2004. However, it did not chart on Billboard Hot 100. Karma was his third single, and it peaked at number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. He went on and released part 3 of Mo Money in the Bank mixtape series called Cashing In on September 19, 2004. In 2004, he got the title of Mixtape Artist of the Year. However, after a successful year, Lloyd Banks had to step back because there were other artists in the G-Unit records. He did not release a single solo project in 2005. However, he featured on 50 Cent's The Massacre album and Tony Yayo's album, and did a couple of features for other artists. Lloyd Banks' second album, The Rotten Apple, was actually to be called The Big Withdrawal. However, Banks decided to change things up a bit after tracks were leaked in 2006. This happened when he left the demo behind for women to leak online. The album sold 143,000 copies, which was considered a failure due to his previous debut numbers. However, the number was a decent sales number. Since he was working with 50 Cent, the boss expected better. The singles from this album included The Cake, Help, and Hands Up. Gamers can remember Hands Up, which was in the game Saints Row 2 if you played it. Banks had some label disputes with Interscope in 2009, which led him to be dropped from the label and put out his third album on G-Unit Records. At this point, Lloyd Banks had kind of been laying low in preparation for his third studio album. The title of the album was Hunger for More 2. Banks released the street classic The Beamer Benz featuring Jules Santana. The classic saw much commercial success and served as a good promo leading up to the album release, which was dropped in November 2010. Banks was in on other singles such as Started Up, which featured Kanye West and Fabulous. Kanye later labeled him the most underrated top 5 MC, and for Banks, this was a source of pride. Banks' reply to Kanye's words was, I was in the studio and somebody hit me with that and told me that, what he said as far as the top 5 things. For me hearing that, it's just like, damn. 50 Cent added by saying, Banks is my favorite rapper, and he is Kanye West's favorite rapper, top 5 dead or alive. Interscope tried to sign Banks back to the label. This was around the time when G-Unit's dominance was over. 50 was more into his business endeavors. The Game was doing well as a solo artist, and Young Buck was beefing with 50, so the group's status was questionable. Even Tony Yayo claimed that the group had broken up. G-Unit made a comeback in 2014. They made it on stage together at Hot 97 Summer Jam. They released collections of singles and mixtapes. However, the reunion didn't last as it broke off again. Instead of managing to outdo himself, he felt the love of hip-hop fade. In July 2018, Lloyd Banks left G-Unit Records as announced by 50 Cent on Instagram. It seems the two didn't have any beef, as 50 encouraged his followers to check out Banks' new mixtape in the post. Although as time passed, the tension between 50 and Banks rose. 50 Cent in a talk said this: "Banks, I don't even know. He couldn't even tell you, like, at any point when you speak to him where the problem is. I put him where I put Marquise, like, they just have something internally just going on with them that gives them sort of resentment toward me, and I just don't even care." In the year, Banks was seen as playing second fiddle to 50 Cent and other members who were in the G Unit. Some said he blended in when he should have stood out, while others saw him as another 50 Cent soldier. Banks had become the defense line when 50 found himself in a lyrical feud and was fighting G Unit's battles rather than focusing on his career. Lloyd waged an infamous verbal war with the Game over diss tracks. However, in the late interviews, the Game said there wasn't any beef. In a talk, the Game would say, "Banks is still one of my favorite MCs. We used to go bar for bar in the studios on who was gonna get the second verse. So I with Banks. I hated the out of Yayo, but I mean, I'm 40 now. There's no animosity with him either." Early on in the years, in terms of Banks' case, 50 made it clear that if he didn't see a substantial return on his investment, he wouldn't hesitate to make it known. And over the years, Banks had been gradually disowned by 50 Cent. Even after their comeback in 2014, Curtis has shown that he had given up on Banks in 2012. 50 Cent added, "There is a point where artists need to develop themselves and their things on their own. He reached that point." Later, in 2020, 50 would double down on his criticism of Banks in his book. Also Harder, Also Smarter is a broad takedown of his former G Unit signees. 50 blamed Lloyd squandering potential centered around a refusal to be proactive. 50 Cent would add, Banks was more content staying on his porch and watching the world from there. Banks wanted things to come for him, as opposed to going out and getting them for himself. That's not me trying to assassinate his character. The guy has Lazy Lloyd tattooed on his arm. He literally wears his laziness on his sleeve. To me, one answer was to change how he interacted with the culture. That's why years ago, I told Banks to film a video of his life and post it on YouTube. Maybe something he says or does will create a spark, go viral, and then he'll have some heat around him again. Banks refused to acknowledge 50's words. Banks expressed annoyance with the current state of the rap game when he was asked about the release of his Cold Corner 3 at a 2015 show. Lloyd said, "Y'all waiting on part 3, right? This is what I'ma do. I'm thinking about releasing it, and when I do, you will pay for it. And it will be pre-orders out there, and if I'm not satisfied with the numbers I get back, it just won't come out." He continued, "It's that simple. I'm so frustrated with hip-hop right now." The project never arrived until 2020. By 2019, the issue of Banks' laziness seemed to have destroyed his camp. In response to his fans' tweet about Banks releasing one more record, Banks responded with, "Let's be real. Ain't nobody checking for Banks anymore." This was a shock, as someone as talented as Banks could wish to hang it up like that. However, Banks got back in the game through the championing of Griselda and Cold Corner 3. This paved the way for a fourth studio album, The Course of the Inevitable. This record got people talking again as Banks displayed his immense talent. The project had endorsements from Travis Scott, Busta Rhymes, The Machine, J. Cole, and others. Lloyd came out and responded to 50 Cent, saying that his work ethic, or lack thereof, ruined his career. He added, "Always humble, usually disciplined, and never hated. Call me quiet, call me lazy, talent never faded." Banks also claimed that the best is yet to come. This shows that he discovered his hunger and refused to harp on past glories. Banks has put himself in a perfect position for a Hall of Fame comeback. Today's video comes to an end, and we thank you for sticking around. So, what was more surprising from the above reveal? And do you think he will utilize the chance to reimagine his legacy and upgrade his story? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to hit the like and don't forget the subscribe button on your way out.